today and via email will be posted with written responses from CalVCB to the Grant Opportunities page of CalVCB's website. Again, that's victims.ca.gov. Those questions and answers will be posted Thursday, November 13th, 2025 by 5 p.m. Pacific time. So today we will be going over the notice of funds available, and I will be emphasizing things that we receive frequent questions on. Again, if you have questions about anything we're going over, please either put your questions in the chat or send them via email to grants@victims.ca.gov. So the California Victim Compensation Board, CalVCB, helps victims pay for many crime-related expenses. Under state law, CalVCB reviews applications and awards grants to trauma recovery centers in California. These centers provide services to crime victims. The grant program awards money to TRCs. So TRCs can offer trauma-informed care to all victims of crime. Victims do not need to apply and be approved for compensation through CalVCB's program to receive help at a TRC. So the services provided at the TRC must follow state law, grant program rules, and this notice of funds available. TRC grants are paid through reimbursement. So this means the TRCs pay for services first. Next, they send CalVCB the expenses by the last business day of the following month. Then they will be paid back for approved expenses within 60 to 90 days from when CalVCB gets and approves the invoices and supporting documentation. Matching funds are not required to apply for the grant. CalVCB encourages other funding sources because the amount of money available each year changes. The grant process is competitive. So we have some key dates that you want to pay attention to. So this NOFA was released October 16th. Today is the 29th of October. The final date to submit questions is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025 by 5 p.m. Pacific time. And again, you can either submit your questions by typing them into the chat on this webinar or emailing them to grants@victims.ca.gov. And we will be posting all the questions we receive with official answers by on Thursday, November 13th by 5 p.m. The final date to submit your application package will be Monday, December 15th, 2025 by 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You will be emailing your grant application package to grants@victims.ca.gov, and if it is not received by us by 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, it will be considered late and will not be considered for scoring. So please plan to submit your email prior to, and we'll be going over what to expect and how to know if your email was received a little bit later. The tentative board award approval date is Thursday, March 19th, 2026. So again, applications that are received after 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Monday, December 15th will be disqualified. Okay. State law authorizes the CalVCB TRC grant program. Grantees must follow state laws and CalVCB TRC grant program rules when spending grant money. All applicants should read the applicable law, and we have these hyperlinked. You will be able to click both these government codes and review the actual text of the law. Below is the summary of what the law requires. The Trauma Recovery Center at the San Francisco General Hospital, University of California, UCSF, is the official state TRC model. It is called the State Pilot Trauma Recovery Center. CalVCB must use the Integrated Trauma Recovery Services model developed by the State Pilot TRC when awarding TRC grants. TRCs must provide outreach and services to crime victims who usually cannot get help, such as homeless victims, victims of chronic mental illness, immigrant or refugee victims, victims with disabilities, victims with diverse ethnic backgrounds, with complex psychological issues, victims under 18 years of age, or involved in the juvenile justice system. TRCs must serve victims of many different crimes, including but not limited to sexual assault, domestic violence, battery, violent crimes, vehicular assault, human trafficking, family members of homicide victims. TRCs must offer mental health and support services. These services should be easy for victims to access. Care may be provided in the victim's home, in the community, or other private safe places. Services include individual and group treatment, medication management, substance abuse treatment, case management, and assertive outreach. Each TRC must have a qualified multidisciplinary team that includes at least one psychologist, one social worker, one psychiatrist to help with medication management and assist with treatment needs. The psychiatrist can be a permanent employee or a contracted employee. Clinicians do not have to work full-time at the TRC. A clinician can either be a licensed clinician or a supervised clinician working to complete their license. Clinicians must be trained or certified to use the treatment methods they provide. TRCs can also have additional staff as needed. Staff must receive support managing the stress from providing services to victims. Each victim should have a single point of contact within the TRC care team. This single point of contact is supported by the multidisciplinary team. Each team shall have a treatment plan, each victim shall have a treatment plan in place with goals that include decreasing psychosocial distress, minimizing long-term disability, improving overall quality of life, reducing the risk of future victimization, promoting post-traumatic growth. The treatment plan should be periodically reviewed by the multidisciplinary team. TRCs must deliver services and provide case management to help victims with going to court, going to medical appointments, or other appointments as needed, completing a CalVCB application, filing a police report or restraining order, finding safe housing, locating financial help, finding medical care, connecting with services to help find a job, connecting with other services as needed. TRCs must offer outreach and case management services to victims, even if they do not want mental health services. TRCs cannot deny services because a person has emotional or behavioral issues resulting from trauma, such as substance abuse problems, low initial motivation, or high anxiety. TRCs must use common types of approved treatments, such as motivational interviewing, harm reduction, seeking safety, cognitive behavioral therapy, trauma-focused cognitive processing therapy. TRCs cannot deny services based on a person's immigration status. So before applying, applicants should review the University of California, San Francisco TRC model. So we have a hyperlink here. It is very extensive and you should review it. In California law, this model is also called the Integrated Trauma Recovery Services or ITRS model, but they are one and the same. So for eligibility, those who apply for this grant must be able to follow the law and grant program rules. They must be able to provide all direct services from their main location. Virtual services are allowed if needed by the client. So CalVCB TRC grant awards are funded by an annual appropriation of $2 million from the Restitution Fund. CalVCB also receives funding from the Safe Neighborhood and Schools Act. This funding is based on a formula and fluctuates each year. The number of grants awarded will be determined by the number of qualified applicants, the amount of funds requested, and the amount of funds available. TRCs provide invoices to CalVCB monthly. CalVCB will reimburse approved program expenses after they happen. The 2026-27 NOFA grant awards are for a two-year cycle effective July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2028. A current grantee is not guaranteed continued funding, so current grantees can apply for a consecutive grant. As far as the amount of money available, we will have an estimate in January when the governor's budget is released, and we will have updates to that in May when the May revision is published. So as of now, the only amount that we know that we will have for this cycle is $2 million. So a complete application package must include all items from the first 3 bullet points below. If not, all information in bullets 1 through 3 is submitted, the application will be disqualified. So you will need a title page, which is attached to the NOFA posting on our website. Numbered responses to the narrative questions that are also attached, questions 1 through 6. A budget worksheet, which is an Excel form. It is also attached. You will need a budget narrative, a client flow chart, organizational chart, and a time task plan. So you may opt to submit 3 non-templated letters of recommendation, including 1 from a law enforcement agency and 1 from a community-based organization. Those letters are not required, but they are encouraged and will be counted in the total points that you may receive in the points possible. So as far as formatting requirements, written responses to each narrative question shall only be 2 pages or less in length. Each response must list the number of the question that is being answered. The following formatting for the response to the narrative questions 1 through 6 and the budget narrative must be used. That is 11-point font Arial, 1-inch margins, and double-spaced. So anything over 2 pages will not be read and scored for each question. So the grant application packages must be submitted as a single PDF file. The budget worksheet should be a separate Excel file. Grant applications must be sent via email to grants@victims.ca.gov no later than 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Monday, December 15th, 2025. Applicants will receive an email confirming receipt of their application. If confirmation is not received during regular business hours, applicants should send a follow-up email to grants@victims.ca.gov to confirm CalVCB's receipt of the application, or call Kyle Archibald at the number provided. So business hours are Monday through Friday between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you send your application outside of that time, you can expect to receive an email on the next business day between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. to confirm receipt of your application. Applications received after 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Monday, December 15th, 2025 will be disqualified. So please be sure to send those prior to the deadline. CalVCB will review application packages to make sure all required sections are present and complete. The formatting requirements must also be followed. Applications missing any required components will be disqualified. Applications that do not follow formatting instructions will just have points deducted. The total application package is worth 100 points. So the application scoring team will only consider the application, will only consider the application information submitted. So nothing outside of what is submitted with this application will be considered when scoring the application. There are 6 narrative questions, 10 points each for a total of 60 points. The budget worksheet is 10 points, budget narrative is 10 points, flow chart 5 points, organizational chart 5 points, time task plan 7 points, letters of recommendation 3 points. The scoring team may deduct up to 4 points for not following formatting requirements. CalVCB will score all application parts using the following rubric. So narrative questions, 10 points each for a total of 60 points. Responses to each narrative question are scored separately. Only information included in the response to the question is scored. The criteria are as follows. 0 is not qualified. That means the answer does not provide demonstrated ability to meet the requirement. Any applicant receiving a 0 on a question is disqualified. A score of 0 means the applicant will not meet all legal requirements, so they will not receive a grant. 1 to 2 is less qualified. The answer is incomplete. The answer provides little or no direct experience. The answer shows lack of understanding of qualifications, or the answer is not easy to follow or understand. 3 to 6 will be a qualified answer. The answer is complete. The answer contains relevant examples of direct experience and complete knowledge of the qualifications. The answer is easy to follow and understand. 7 to 10 is highly qualified. Must meet qualified standard above. Additionally, the applicant must clearly state in each response that services will begin within 30 days of receiving an award. Existing organizations must state in each response that they can begin providing proposed services within 30 days of receiving an award. So this includes addressing proposed service expansions. So all answers each question 1 through 6 in order to get a score of 7 to 10 for highly qualified must meet all of the qualifications in the 3 to 6 point range and must clearly state in the response that services will begin within 30 days of receiving an award. To receive full points for the budget worksheet, it must meet these criteria. Be the correct worksheet. So you want to make sure you're using the worksheet that's attached to the 26-27 posting, not from prior years. Match the information in the rest of the application. Match the total dollar amount requested. So whatever amount is requested on your title sheet should match the budget worksheet as well. Include the 3 required positions, which again are a social worker, a psychologist, and a psychiatrist. List salaries, administrative costs, and other expenses. Does not contain errors. Budget thresholds must be met. So at least 75% of the budget must be for personnel costs. At least 60% of personnel costs must be clinical staff. Not more than 40% of personnel can be non-clinical staff. Operating costs cannot be more than 25% of the total budget. There's an optional client emergency fund, which is part of the 25% operating costs. The client emergency fund cannot be more than 1% of the total award. Indirect costs, if allowed, are part of the 25% operating costs, and indirect costs cannot be more than 5% of the total award. Budget narrative. So to receive full points, the budget narrative must meet these criteria. Match the information in the budget worksheet, match the total dollar amount requested, give a detailed answer on each budget line, explain why expenses are needed, itemize all expenses, including salaries and administrative costs. So it should clearly explain everything that is depicted in the budget worksheet. Client flow chart. To receive full points, the client flow chart must be comprehensive, clear, easy to follow, specific to the organization, cover all TRC processes, include all relevant phases of client contact. Phases can include referrals, intake, evaluation, treatment, and more. Organizational chart. To receive full points, the organizational chart must be clear, be complete, Include all positions listed in the application, show reporting relationships, and explain how the TRC is part of a larger organization if applicable. The time task plan. To receive full points, a time task plan must be clear, be thorough, be organization specific, give an overview of all activities and milestones. These can include planning, operations, and activities. Outline the month activities will happen. Outline when performance measures will be reached. Describe if tasks will happen once, sometimes, or on a regular schedule. Examples of tasks include preparation for the grant, training, and treatment goals. So we don't want to see that all tasks happen in all months if that's not applicable. Letters of recommendation are 3 points. The application may include 3 letters of recommendation. They can be from organizations the applicant is currently working with or plans to work with. To receive full points, the letters of recommendation must meet these criteria. So the letter cannot be generic or dated in the past. The writer must explain their reasons for support. One letter must be from a law enforcement agency. One letter must be from a community-based organization. Okay, so applying does not mean an organization will get a grant award. CalVCB may award a grant for only part of the amount requested. CalVCB evaluates the following before deciding on the dollar amount: the amount of money available, how many organizations applied, the amount requested by each organization. Any grant money not used by a TRC will revert to the funding source. So as far as the budget requirements, as I mentioned before, at least 75% of the total grant amount must go to personnel services. Those services include salaries, wages, and fringe benefits. Some positions may not use grant money to pay for the full salary, so use the budget drawdown worksheet to show what percentage the TRC grant will pay. At least 60% of personnel services must pay for clinicians providing direct client services. This includes salaries, wages, and fringe benefits. The TRC can use either budgeted staff or contractors, but contractors are only paid a single hourly rate. So you do not pay fringe benefits for contractors. Any total cost should be decided and factored into that single hourly rate. So up to 40% of personnel services budget can pay for non-clinical staff. This includes staff providing indirect client services or administrative services. The budget can include salaries, wages, and fringe benefits. The TRC can use either budgeted staff or contractors for these services. Paid time off, PTO, leave accrual are part of normal costs of salary and wages. CalVCB will not reimburse these costs as a separate line item. The grantee will give CalVCB the information needed to determine an hourly rate. The rate includes the employee's wage and PTO leave time amount. CalVCB will use this hourly rate to reimburse the time an employee spends on TRC activities. So the grantee must keep track of the time. Do not submit a separate request for reimbursement for PTO leave used. The grantee must manage the PTO leave time bank. The grantee will give CalVCB the information used to calculate PTO or leave. The grantee must identify each employee receiving fringe benefits. Those benefits must be included in the salary, wages, and benefits total budget. Reimbursement for fringe benefits must be in proportion to the work employee does on the grant. Fringe benefits include FICA, retirement, and insurance. The grantee must provide a description of the benefits offered. The grantee must include the amounts of benefits or percentages by category, position, and class. CalVCB will only reimburse contracted staff for their hourly rate. Requests for reimbursement of fringe benefits are not considered an eligible expense. CalVCB will only reimburse contracted personnel their hourly rates. The reimbursement will only cover the TRC services provided. Grantees may use contractors for personnel services. The grantee must include the information in the approved grant budget or submit a budget modification request to CalVCB. The grantee must get written pre-approval of budget modification requests from CalVCB. The grantee should only use contractor services to help achieve the grant objectives. Grantees must make sure each contractor each contractor follows the grant agreement. Contractors must turn in a monthly functional timesheet. They must also collect and report data if needed. Contracted staff shall not affect the grantee's overall responsibility for the management of the grant. The grantee shall reserve sufficient rights and control to enable it to fulfill its responsibilities of the grant. Grantees must submit a written agreement to CalVCB for each contractor for pre-approval. The agreement must include the contractor's hourly rate, dates and times of service, and all budget items. For operating expenses, grantees can use up to 25% of the grant for operating costs. Use the invoice worksheet to describe each operating expense. A client emergency fund is optional. It can amount to no more than 1% of the total award. Indirect costs can amount to no more than 5% of the total award. Only organizations with existing indirect cost allocation plans can receive this amount. The plans must be on file with the state or federal government. So if you already have an existing cost allocation plan with the state or federal government and you can submit that documentation to CalVCB, then you may include up to 5% on your grant budget for indirect costs. The applicant may include rent and operating costs. Applicants must include a square footage listed in the lease agreement and rental amount. The cost of rent must align with similar market rates. Applicants can use grant funds or other financial sources for any of the budgeted line items. When submitting invoices to CalVCB, grantees must clearly indicate the portion of an expense that is being charged to the TRC grant. So all applications become the property of CalVCB. All submitted applications are public records. They can be released under the California Public Records Act. CalVCB can withdraw the NOFA at any time. CalVCB makes no representation that any funding will be awarded to any applicant responding to the NOFA. CalVCB and a grantee can end the grant agreement with 30 days written notice to the other party. CalVCB may reduce or end grant funding for reasons that may include, but are not limited to, if the project fails to comply with any terms or conditions of the grant award, if the state reduces or eliminates funds designated for the grant award, or if revenues are not collected at the amount expected. If state funding is reduced or eliminated, CalVCB may immediately terminate or reduce the grant award. CalVCB will notify the grantee in writing if it needs to reduce or end grant funding. CalVCB will pay for allowable costs through the notice date if state funds are available. CalVCB will reimburse all reasonable and allowable expenses up to the date of termination. Grantees must use the award to provide services to victims of crime. Grant funds cannot replace or supplant other funding available or forthcoming. Grantees cannot use funds to pay for the things they already have agreed to pay for using other funding sources. CalVCB will review all applications to prevent this from happening. CalVCB may audit any funding and expenditure after the end of the grant. CalVCB may suspend or terminate a grant award if it finds a grantee used funds to cover expenses they already agreed to pay with non-grant money, supplantation. Grantees will be required to refund funds already provided. So the board must approve funding recommendations. Afterwards, CalVCB will notify each applicant if their funding request was approved or denied. For approved applications, this notice will include the approved award amount. CalVCB may request more information or clarification from grantees. CalVCB may contact the project lead to discuss the budget and provide required revisions. The TRC grant liaison will request updates to the following items: goals and outcomes based on a new funding recommendation, updated budget drawdown worksheet, and a standard 204 form. Grant agreement/contracts are legal documents or legal agreements between the grantee and CalVCB. Grantees are responsible for doing what the contract says, including delivering a specified results. Grantees must manage all funds appropriately. CalVCB will coordinate the review, approval, and signing of the contract. CalVCB will give a copy of the grant contract and approved budget to the grantee. TRCs must submit itemized invoices every month. They are due by the last business day of the following month. The invoices must include an invoice worksheet, Microsoft Excel file detailing all expenses on the invoice worksheet, budget drawdown worksheet that includes a budget tab, drawdown request tab, staffing tab, and emergency expenditure tab. CalVCB TRC functional timesheets for every budgeted and contracted employee. Grantees must complete, sign, and date timesheets monthly. TRC timesheets, if applicable, for all employees and contracted staff. Timesheets are not needed if the TRC submits detailed invoices for clients. The invoices must show the date, time, service, and unique client identifier. Payroll records for employees and contracted staff. The records must include the employee or contracted staff person's name, position or classification, time-based, breakdown of salary and wages, fringe benefits, PTO, leave accrual calculation. Invoices for contracted services, all supporting documentation for fringe benefit claims, all supporting documentation for operating expenses. Bills, invoices, statements, receipts, documents must include all pages. Tier C, certification of reports signed by the person with signature authority. These reports confirm all reported information is correct and grant expenditures are for allowable costs. Grant invoices should only include expenditures for TRC clients. Invoices should not include services to clients funded and reported to other sources. For data collection reporting requirements, grantees must collect and submit data reports monthly. They must use the Excel files provided by CalVCB. Grantees shall send them by the last business day of the month following service. The reports shall be sent to grants@victims.ca.gov. The grantee must send forms and data requested by CalVCB per Government Code Section 13963.1 G2. Data files must include CalVCB requested metrics. These metrics may include, but are not limited to, client resources, demographic information, crime information, services provided to the client, services referred to the client, session and case management information, assessment data, training provided, community outreach provided, collaborative activities, and other metrics requested by CalVCB. The grantee must keep accurate records and supporting source documentation for at least 3 years from the end of the grant period. CalVCB may review the records for accuracy. The grantee will only report data for activities funded by the grant, including treatment, case management, training, outreach, collaboration. Software requirements for data submission are Excel 2010 version or newer. So that concludes our review of the NOFA. Again, for anybody who joined late, this recording will be posted to our website, and all questions either should go in this chat or sent via email to grants@victims.ca.gov. Thank you for joining today, and have a great rest of your day.